I'm Linda Moulton Howe, reporter, editor, and producer of EarthFiles.com and the EarthFiles YouTube channel. And my goal has always been to try to be at the cutting edge of news in science, environment, and medicine. And I am sitting here today because in that context, in the September of 1979, I started seeing headlines about dead, mutilated animals with no blood and no tracks around them. And that's what caught my attention as being director of special projects at the CBS station in Denver. How could you have animals that would have no tracks around their body with an ear, eye, tongue, jaw, genitals, and rectal tissue removed and no tracks even around the body? And it is that collision of being a curious person from the time I was 3 or 4 years old. There was a family story that I heard several times from my mom and dad that we were in a park and we were doing a picnic, and my mom and dad were brushing away flies and bees from the food. And suddenly they said, I looked up and I said, "What kind of bees make mustard?" And from that point forward, I was known as the person who always asks the most questions. And there is some connection between that at 3 or 4, making a deduction that we were dealing with bees and flies and honey and mustard, that in a strange way was sort of in anticipation of the whole rest of my life. That when I make these strange connections and I'm left with questions, there is something in me that never lets go until I know the answer. Well then, in September of 1979, the universe gave me a question that 44 years later, I would have gone through thousands of miles, thousands of questions, but 44 years of investigation, and I still don't know nearly enough about animal mutilations, human abductions, extraterrestrials that are based on our planet in our solar system, and that the truth is, we humans, DNA manipulation is the answer to our creation by extraterrestrial intelligences. That's the truth. And if you said, what would energize, what would keep anybody going for 44 years after the same question? I think my overriding impulse that is everything, I really like to know the truth. I like to know the truth about everything that I have encountered in my life. I want to know the truth about every extraterrestrial civilization that is in this universe. I want to know the truth about the edge of this universe. How many universes are there? And if we're in a multiverse, then we could be in a specific universe made for one reason: to be a training ground, a university for souls to come into and learn about white versus black, about light versus dark, about love versus hate. A training university universe for souls. And I say that because I've become convinced that that must be the truth about this universe, because more and more physicists that I have talked to are saying that this universe is a hologram. If it is a hologram, it is being projected from another dimension or another universe. And there is nothing that excites me more now than trying to get to the bottom of that and what the truth is, and knowing that physicists today all over the planet are studying various facets of the universe that we humans are in is a universe that could be a holographic projection by something else so advanced that it could project our universe. And then, if the whole goal is to learn about the difference between white and black at every frequency level, that's when something in me kicks in and feels that is the biggest truth of all.
So you found the truth, in a sense. You're saying you searched, and maybe this is not the ultimate answer, but you're saying you did find, let's say that is the truth.
Yeah.
Then what's your next mission? Where do you go with that?
I want to see every part of this holographic universe. I want to know if I can go through a black hole into another dimension, into another universe. I want to know if I can actually verify that there are multiple universes that go on, as Roger Penrose said to me. The truth is, Linda, we're an infinity of cycles of time. Making the cycles of time in some way almost as if that is the energy, and that the universes are the product. And I want to see it. I want to know it all.
Why do you think it's been your destiny to know it all? And you've had experiences along the way that have led you. Talk about that, because it's not like you're just, you know, some secretary somewhere and suddenly you get it. It's been your life, Linda.
Well, you know, in a way, it ties back. I was in first grade. I remember distinctly being in first grade and walking to the elementary school. And that was the time that I began, every time I went to bed, it was splitting in two, and part of me rising into the ceiling and being very aware of me in bed. And that I never talked about this with my parents. That is the really unusual part. It was as if I knew something inside that I was familiar with, the splitting in two, and that I wanted to have the experience of joining in or moving into the ceiling, because every time I got close, it was a cottage cheese ceiling, there was this tetra blue, electric blue light that was around all of the cottage cheese in the ceiling. And it was a yearning. It felt like a yearning, as if I knew this light. And I wanted to go into that tetra blue light, and every single time. And that was a challenge to me when something says no to me. And there would be this voice in my head, telepathic, no, danger, you cannot, meaning I was not going to be allowed to go through the ceiling out. And I accepted that there was danger. I accepted that the voice was something that I recognized and I obeyed. But I never stopped splitting and going to that ceiling. And then it was as if there was exercises being given to me. Because when I couldn't go through the ceiling, I then tried to imagine the end of everything. And in my 6-year-old mind, that's the way I thought of it. I wanted to, like I want to see infinity. I want to see all of the universes that are there. And so this part that seemed to be like a teacher to me, I would start moving like I was flying over a gray, slightly silver going into black. And I knew that this was everything, and I wanted to get to the end of everything, the end of infinity. And I would get so perspiring, that's what I remember, that my skin would start feeling cold because I'm perspiring, because I'm working so hard to see the end of infinity. And I thought of that word. I had that word in my concept at age 6. And if you think now, as I sit in front of you at 81 revolutions around the sun, in some ways, those 81 just seem like that. And in another way, as I think about trying to see the end of infinity and go through the blue light in the ceiling, there's always been a part of me on the inside that seemed to always already know what in this matter form I've been trying to duplicate. And eventually I began to realize I had already done what I had been trying to do at age 6. And it is as if I have an internal knowledge so that when Sheriff Tex Graves up in northern Colorado in Logan County said to me, the perpetrators of animal mutilations are creatures from outer space. And I felt this sting. It had a physical sensation of sting throughout my entire body when he said those words. But when I have looked back at that moment, it was like catching up to a destiny. I didn't know that the next 44 years of my life were going to be trying to not only get to the bottom of animal mutilations, but everything about extraterrestrials, everything about the universe, everything about the whole concept that we could be in a universe that was a holographic projection, which I think it is, and that our entire human relationship with the cosmos, with the night sky, is completely different than the reality of the universe that we're in. I somehow already knew a lot of this when I was 6 years old. And that probably is one of the most interesting things to me now in the 81st revolution. Where all have you been before? And that I know that I was in a life in Egypt as a female who had a tremendous amount of knowledge about extraterrestrials. And that I have had more memories about that. And in a strange way, there is an overlay of this life and a life in Egypt in which I had exactly the same challenge, only I've only become aware of this in the last several years. And maybe it's worth talking about because I think that the merging, when people begin to become aware of another life and the current life, you get insights that are astonishing. And in that life, her whole mission, assigned, was to bring to the public Egyptian civilization the truth that extraterrestrials had founded Mesopotamia. And that I've had experiences where I have had repeating dreams in which I've had papyrus with the green and the various colors that they made them in front of me. And that I was both teaching and trying to connect about the fact that extraterrestrial civilizations were part of the birth of Mesopotamia, and that I was involved from some standpoint of knowledge, like a teacher. But my only students were all men. I was female. I had the snake. I had the armbands. I held the rod. I was the communicator, but never to women. So in an odd reversal, I have ended up in the 20th to the 21st centuries as a female who took on subjects that had only been available to men. And there is something about this life of knowing that I was never ever going to be turned away from anything because I was female. And in a strange way, that Egyptian overlay life, she was killed. She was poisoned. I saw how it was done. I then had, coming full circle back to splitting out of the body, that I then saw my body of her in Egypt from a position that was approximately 10 feet above the body, laid out on a black sarcophagus. 3 females were putting all of the pleats in this gold dress that she was put in. And in that position of looking down, as if I had the ability to move in and out, just like back in this life when I was 6, I hear this voice asking me as I'm coming out of her body, what did you learn in that life that you can apply to the life you're in now? And the voice was that clear. And then I heard myself answering about her lying in the black sarcophagus. In her death was her victory. I had to wear, it was like a burlap, if you think of a weave, but it was a little finer than burlap. And she had to have the whole cloak on. And I had to hold a black, I think it was teak. It was like a rod. It was approximately 5 feet high. And she had to hold the rod that had a gold circle on the top. And it was very important for reasons that I still don't know why. She had to hold her thumb up when she took a hold of the rod. And she took a hold of the rod standing at a sandstone or limestone podium. And the papyrus that she was reading from was on that limestone podium. And she stood like this, and all men also wearing the same thing. Headed, hooded cloaks, like she, but they were all men, come through a door that is, it's all stone, everything is stone. There's no wood, there's nothing else, it's all stone. And when the door opens, it's approximately 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, and again, made out of limestone. They are benches. And the men who come in the cloaks, it's all silent, nobody speaks, and they come in on these 4 rows while she is in this position. And they sit, and they are looking up at her. So they are down approximately 10 feet below where she is with the limestone podium. And she begins to read from the colorful Egyptian text that is in this papyrus. And where I came into this over and over and over in memory, she is reading words that are in the papyrus. And she knows they are lies. She knows they are lies. And everything in her begins to try to calculate, how is she going to insert truth, in a position where her power, thumb, and that rod, she is supposed to be the center of truth. And she knows, as she is before all of these men in those 4 limestone benches, that if she makes a mistake in how she is going to penetrate the lies with truth, she will die. She goes ahead. She speaks truth. And the next scene in the recall that I've always had, there was a particular man who had a headdress, who takes her down to a boat. She knows that she will go into exile and be killed. And he takes her onto this boat, and there are other men. They're all doing this in paddles, and she knows that she's going to an island away from the mainland. And in that movement across the water, she knows that she acted to tell the truth and penetrate the lies, and it all had to do with other civilizations that were not on this planet. And when the boat comes to this island, I can hear, in this other life, I can hear the swish sound as the boat moves through these tall grasses. And then the man that she knows comes to where she is and takes her, and as her foot in a specific sandal drawn between her big toe and the next toe, when the foot hits the island, she's released. She did make a decision, and she knows she will die. But when she stands on that island, she knows peace for the first time in her life as a priestess, made to read papyrus to the men who were in that position of power. And the next thing that I'm shown is a basket woven, and in it are persimmons, that orange persimmon. And one of the persimmons has a bite. You can see the teeth marks. And I know when I'm shown it, that's how she died. The persimmon was poison. In this life of the 20th to the 21st century, I still can remember being a little child with my mother in a grocery store, walking where they had some persimmons in a place you could buy. And my first sight as a little kid, the persimmons scared me to death. I was terrified of them with no understanding. All of this that I have been telling you began to even explain a terror in a little child in this life. Links back to my being a priestess in Egypt who chose to tell the truth to the men who would be going out into the society and also telling what was supposed to be the reality. And the reality was filled with lies, and she knew it. And she made a decision, and it was that remembering. What did you learn in that life to apply to this life? And that answer was so clear. In her death was her victory. But now, in 81 revolutions around the sun in this life, I think what that meant was her goal, her mission, her assignment was to bring into the Egyptian civilization at a specific point that the reality was that we were in a universe that was teeming with life and consciousness. But it's always left me with another question. Always I am left with questions. Where did she originate? Which universe did she originate? Why, at age 6, did I want to see the end of infinity? I've always wondered what she did in the other lives before that life, because she was penetrating. She knew real truth about real other civilizations that were not on Earth. In a strange way, if my soul is her soul, she is amazing to me. There was an extraordinary strength with her knowledge that gave her the ability to say, I'm going to penetrate these lies with truth from the beginning. And in a strange way, that's the definition of my life this time. And I hate lies. I hate lies. She did. So I guess as we're talking today, what keeps resonating in me, it's as if we think in terms of a life. And maybe what I'm sensing for the first time in this life, talking to you, palpably, that the reality is you could have a soul assignment that could go on for millions of years. And you would go in and out of different bodies, gaining from each one, getting to a point where you could do things that you could never do if you were starting. And there is something about sitting here I think that where I have been and what I have been seeing in all of these lives in this universe, I come from the universe that is projecting this universe. I think that's the truth. And it's why I would feel so at home in these discussions with the professors who are now aghast that we are in a holographic universe. It is being projected by something that is so vast and advanced. I come from there. But I'm in this universe struggling to understand and report about all of the things that relate to the cycles of life and death here. And that is what shocks me the most. It really is. Constant killing and birth. Constant cycles of living and dying here. And something in me feels that is so foreign to what I fundamentally know. And that when I was 6 years old, trying to see the end of infinity, that is closer to what I actually came from.
But you just said all the lifetimes you had, there was a learning. And so other people...
I must have been on this universe for a long time.
Yes.
But that's not where I came from.
No, but all those other people that are living and dying, that are suffering, you achieved that eons ago. And maybe they're making their way to that overview universe, less like you're at the threshold of right now, of integrating that.
Well, I know that Egypt was not strictly Homo sapiens sapien for sure. It was not. And I think that the Assyrians were another form of extraterrestrial civilization, and how much of it was hybridization with the universe that I feel now for the first time. I've never ever had this concept. I have come from the universe that is projecting this one. And what is the reason? What is the reason for projecting this universe?
Well, pretend or take the place as if you actually are that. You are from that. You're not Linda. You're the being projecting that universe. What would be the reason you would do that?
Because the yin and the yang is the fundamental truth. It is the biggest truth of all. And what I don't understand, I have never understood in this universe that I talked about earlier. I do not understand the existence of darkness and evil. I don't understand killing. I do not understand killing other life form to eat. I don't understand why there would ever be the end of life and growing and evolving.
But there isn't, because you
and if it is in these cycles, then what is the goal of the universe that created this one that is a hologram and seems everything here seems to be about the cycle of life and death?
But wouldn't that be where the
But the souls have to be the answer. That what is the animating energy that would have any memory of what I'm talking about? It's not my brain, it's not my matter body, it has to be my soul. And it would mean that my soul is cycling like an energy matrix, taking in all of this, moving even universes. And that is where the memory of everything would be. Your soul would be the only vehicle that could provide this.
And your victory was where? From that lifetime.
That's right.
And isn't that a key? In a sense
In
that,
her victory. In her death was her victory.
right. So isn't that the key to the cycle, that there is no death, and the illusion was the victory over the illusion? That's what I get. Is that too simple?
But I mean,
I've never been here in thought until now with you guys.
but this life is a victory. You know, your life is a victory, and also the kind of what you were saying last night, declassify reality. It's the same thing as what you did back then,
Yeah.
right?
I was declassifying the reality for those men, knowing I would die for it. But there is something in me that feels if you really don't anchor yourself in truth, if you really are not grounded in truth, then you are like a will-o-wisp, that any wind, any breeze in any direction can take you. And there's something in me that feels like if you don't stand your ground in truth, you fail forever. And I think I have lived a life this time in which I think it's clear to most people now. I really don't want to do or report anything that is not true. But the truth, no matter how strange it is where I am supposed to be, sharing and holding. It's like holding a line, holding a space. I'm back in that huge limestone room with all those men below me, and she's holding the rod of power And she makes the decision that she is going to hold that truth.
And you've made that decision again.
And I made that decision also in this life.
But maybe your victory will not be the way it was then. The victory will be in, finally, the world.
Maybe. That it would go public would be the ultimate victory. That it would go to the whole world, the truth. And that's what I'm hoping will happen in this life.
But that's what you've done.
Yeah.
You weren't killed for it in this life.
Not yet.
No, I think you've been protected. But if you take the view that you've come from that other universe, what would be the purpose of hiding the truth and your mission to reveal it? You know, it's like there's...
Because it takes being able to sort of go in a maze and make all these turns, because if you die too early, you have lost the ability. And so I have had to develop a way of being able to work largely alone. Because if you work with a lot of people, you have too many leaks. And I have truly had a life of dangerous discussions. And you learn a certain technique way of not being public until you feel that it's right. So I've had that sort of rheostat control on my life, and now if everything goes public, I think I would be thrilled beyond my comprehension.
But I'm also not asking about the content. I'm asking about, let's say you are from that other universe, the energetic knowledge. I mean, forget the truth, the UFOs are not, but something else that on a soul level comes through and survives and flourishes because you were able to rely on that self that's eternal. That's where I'm going.
And that's the part that is holding the truth. That is the part that penetrated in Egypt that caused death. But that is the part that is, to me, it's like I have a sense of self, and that sense of self is I am not going to be forced to tell a lie for love or money.
Right, because you know the truth. You know the truth. I mean, and you can tell when it's not the truth. So inside of you is held the deepest truth of all. And that's some eternal essence of you.
Yeah. This is amazing. The memory upon memory. I've never quite felt this before.
Because something's coming through now. It's like I can see it in your eyes. They're sharp blue.
I think that the government is not going to be completely recalcitrant and not give us truth because some of us have told the truth and the government doesn't want to reinforce any of us. But I honestly feel sitting here, we are going to get that headline. We are not alone in this universe. It is going to happen. This is the first time I've ever felt this is going to finally happen.
And when we do, how does that change reality and the nature of existence?
We won't be living a whole universe cosmic lie. My God. And the idea that we are perched at an intersection to declassify reality that has been classified by power brokers on this planet for so long, and how many other planets in this particular universe have been subjected to the same kind of suppression about all life and consciousness in this universe for reasons that are not clear. It would be like finally, after infinity, that there is finally a break for an entire universe that will be grounded in truth and not deception.
Well, if you think back or remember or project back, do you think you somehow were an extraterrestrial that was the beginning of infinity? I mean, what do you think about when you think about, because you didn't come here, it wasn't your first rodeo, you came here you came here with an awareness. So you're doing the same thing this lifetime, in a sense, you're educating the world, but what was the sort, if you could imagine, without making up, but let it come to you, what was that original ET connection, whatever lifetime or existence that takes you to?
It's what haunts me. I would like to know where the beginning of my soul is.
Is there a beginning?
And that's another question that I think is really relevant to humanity. Do we have a beginning of our humanness as a soul in something that is recognizable to us as human, or do we have beginnings in infinity? That the soul is emerged or emerging, and it may not emerge first in matter at all. And now it's beginning to be where I'm talking to physicists who are looking at this as a holographic universe, and the deeper you go into that, it has to be projected. And if you follow the projection back, is it in another dimension? Is it in another universe? And why? Why would any consciousness in any universe project another universe? If this is a university for souls, that's what resonates with me as the closest. And then you come to probably the biggest haunting of my entire existence in this life. I truly do not understand why there should be any darkness. I do not understand evil. I do not understand why any soul would end up in any kind of a vehicle that would be evil. I don't. Something in me hits that, and I feel this is, that maybe the essence of everything I have learned and all of the cycles of life I have been in is that it is the power of light that I am joined with. I feel that the power of light, and that sentence in the Nag Hammadi, the thought that dwells in the light is the true existence of everything there is. And in a strange way, being in a human matter body is like being taken as far away from the thought that dwells in the light as possible. And yet in this universe, it is the evolution of matter in sync with, or trying to vibrate to the frequency of light, that seems to be the true goal of all the avatars. And that the more you think about how many lives we may have all lived, that the concept of dying when you're excited by learning seems overwhelmingly depressing. And now we're beginning to learn about extraterrestrials that live lives that can go up to 1,000 years because they know how to sustain every single cell of their body for 1,000 years. Why is it so uneven? Why is that landscape that I tried so hard to see the end of as a 6-year-old lying in bed, why is it punctuated with darkness?
Could it be to learn the light? I mean, if you were all light, how would you even know that you're light? If you're just light. If all there was light, how would you know anything else? How would you, that's what I'm seeing from what you're saying. How else do you define the light in relationship, the yin to the yang? And maybe if you have all these lifetimes, maybe there is no death. because you've remembered your eternal existence already. And the play of the illusion of the simulation is for that overview effect. I mean, I'm not saying
No,
that's
you're saying something that I think also is true. I really do think that the soul has cycled and recycled and gone in and out of matter and other dimensions and other frequencies. And something that constantly beats in me is I want to see and know everything. There is like I have a compulsion to want to penetrate what seems to be artificial restraints on us as humans, and that the truth is so much greater than what we look at. It is so much greater than what human evolution has been. And the sadness about the children who are born and they have absolutely nothing to support the life. And something in me feels when I look at some of the mail that comes out now in 2023, in which it will show an elephant, a baby, that has been killed for something. This is the part of living on Earth that is so painful. It is incomprehensible that we could come from light and then be in matter bodies on a planet where there is so much mindless killing, whether it is for food or whether it is for jewelry or whatever it is for. I think that is probably the most confusing part of my life now. I do not understand all of the different facets of death that is being presented to us right now in 2023. The killing of innocent animals, the killing of innocent humans in war, the number of people that have no food. We're on the same planet. And all of that is going on in front of us. And some of us are more fortunate. But there is this part of me every morning in my home. I stand in front of a very specific glass door where the sun comes in. And it is almost as if all of the part of me that knows infinity is standing in front of the sun and saying, "Thought that dwells in the light, please help me understand. How do we change this beautiful planet into one that is completely supporting life and not death?" And we seem to be moving on a path toward destruction. I think for the very first time, I'm beginning to feel in this discussion a glimpse past the matter world, and that death itself is not really so terrifying, because I really palpably feel there is a link. In her death was her victory. And if this whole planet breaks open, we're not alone in this universe. And it is ricocheting from one end to the other of this 13.8 billion universe. Consciousness is what has been released. And I mean consciousness between the whole universe that is like a living being itself, and each mind and soul, but especially the souls. I can feel it like a frequency in which all the souls and all the universe, in a strange way with this headline, would be released to feel each other. I'm serious.
Thank you. Thank you very much for...
This is actually amazing.